Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. I'm Ben Schneider. With me is Adam Lemmerese and Josh Birch. We've had Jack from Formula E Zone on our program in the past. Today, we have one of his colleagues, Edward Hunter, joining us. He has participated in our live public chat room in the past.
Thanks, Ben. It's good to be here, especially with you, Josh, who I was commentating with earlier. And I'm really excited to get into this weekend's London E-Prix, which has been a fantastic event to watch and hopefully to analyze and talk about as well.
Yeah, certainly a crazy couple of races in London. Be sure to leave a comment, ask questions. We'll display them on the screen and respond as we get to them. Most racing series are off this weekend with the Tokyo Summer Olympics taking place. We only have Formula E to discuss today. And Adam, we'll kick things off with you.
Thanks, Ben. Two races in the UK produced two hometown winners. Yesterday we saw Jake Dennis win for BMW Andretti, capturing his first win since the Valencia E-Prix. Today we had Alex Lynn in the Mahindra, winning his first career Formula E victory. So my question to start off with to you, Josh, what was it like to have two English winners winning this weekend, and what does it do for British motorsports in general?
Big lift, I think, for the British public as well. To see not just one, but two British winners in Formula E at their home race is amazing. It's been away for some time, the London E-Prix, and we've got more British drivers on the grid now than we had back in season one. Disappointed one of them wasn't Sam Bird, but delighted that it was Jake Dennis, and especially for Alex Lynn being on top. And I think, as Ed pointed out as well during the commentary earlier on, it's three British winners in a row in motorsport because Hamilton won Silverstone a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, absolutely, Josh. And Jake Dennis, of course, from Nuneaton in Warwickshire, and Alex Lynn from Essex, I believe, Romford in Essex. So yeah, both Alex Lynn from a bit closer to London, but both, of course, English drivers. And just a nice little comment from Joe there, who's just watching in a cab. But yeah, I definitely great to see them both win because they're both really talented young drivers who struggle up to getting their chance in Formula E. Alex Lynn in particular has had a really tough time. Of course, it's Jake Dennis's debut season, and he's won two races this season. Alex Lynn has only just won his first after really struggling to get his footing in, but he's finally found his feet at Mahindra. So good for the drivers, and like Josh says, great for the British public who haven't had a race in London for quite some time, and this is definitely something new, novel, and interesting with that indoor-outdoor layout at Excel.
Well, we saw Dennis and Lynn having success. The championship leader, Sam Bird, didn't do so well this weekend and lost the championship points lead. Race one, he was in an argy-bargy and didn't finish. In race two, he got taken out by Norman Nato, resulting in a 3-spot penalty in Berlin. When it comes to the season-ending rounds in Berlin, how will Sam Bird do? And do you think he'll have to have a lot of momentum going in to the season finale?
Well, you do the math now, he's 14 points back, so you'd have to think he's going to have to at least go out and finish on the podium. He's got a couple of chances, obviously, in Berlin to get it done, and I think he is still firmly in the championship fight. But, when you think about Formula E, I know we've joked on this program before that it's kind of like a wheel of destiny with how much parity there is. Just before they came to New York, Sam Bird looked like he wasn't anywhere close to a championship points lead, goes out and wins a race in New York and leading the championship standings. So it just goes to show how quickly things can change in Formula E. And, him only being third in points right now, he's definitely still in the fight, but he has to go out and, he can't have a repeat of what happened this weekend in London.
Absolutely agree with you there, Adam, as well. It was a race to forget. It's been a weekend to forget for Sam Bird as well. Usually he's quite good around the streets of London. He won here when it was at Battersea Park. But the first instant of the race at, 2:11, him and Da Costa making contact. It was noted by the stewards. Then later on in the race at 2:49, him and Nato were under investigation for causing a collision. I said in commentary, bit harsh there. Nato seemed to turn into him. Bird went for a lunge, though, as Ed pointed out as well. But as he said, after the race, just before the podium, the 3 plays grid penalty for the next race. Sam Bird is going to be crossing his fingers, crossing his toes, doing anything he can, rain dances as well, so that he can get out of Group 1 in that first race in Berlin, because that's really where it's been struggling this weekend. Poor qualifying performances. Rain affected him both as well. He struggled. He hasn't got through. Q1 is effectively a championship death zone. So we need to get that sorted out. He needs to get into it. We saw, luckily today, actually, if I get my notes out, De Vries managed to get through. He topped the session with 6th overall, so it is possible. Bird needs to look at what De Vries has done, get a good time in, get out of Q1, take the 3 place grid penalty for Super Pole, start maybe 6th, and get his title back on hope. As you said, Ben, as well, he was out of it completely. He won race 2 in Saudi Arabia. Then he sort of drifted around the season and contact in Rome as well in both races. Then he drifted in between Valencia and into Pueblo and Monaco as well. He was all over the place. Brought back into it in New York City as well. But London's been a one to forget. It's been typical Sam Bird this weekend, where he grabs the title and then it just gets dropped away from him.
One of the most controversial things that happened in race 2 was Lucas di Grassi. It was during the safety car period that he came through the pit lane, stopped briefly, and then went on and was leading the race. Well, that didn't sit well with Formula E. He did get black flagged, and in the end, after the race, he was disqualified. It was one of the most weirdest things that I've ever seen happen in motorsports, and for Audi, it was a weekend to forget. How can Audi bounce back after this weekend, going in to the season finale in Berlin, knowing that it's their last season in Formula E? And do you think Rene Rast has a shot to win any of the races?
Absolutely. I think Rene Rast is a brilliant driver. Di Grassi also a very brilliant driver in terms of, and he's won before, of course, in Puebla earlier this season. Audi scored a 1-2 after Wehrlein was himself controversially disqualified from a winning position. But in terms of the incident today with Di Grassi, obviously with Rast, it was just a case of Buemi took him out of the race essentially, and Buemi copped a penalty, which when he was interviewed afterwards, I was watching an interview that Jack Giordamano did because he was on site this weekend with Buemi, and Buemi sort of a bit sheepishly said, well, maybe I kind of deserve that one. Essentially, he rather graciously sort of copped to that one. And then with Lucas, of course, it was a case of Lucas was running in 7th position. The safety car was running a bit slow. The pit lane, of course, at the Excel Centre in Docklands is indoors. It's quite a short, obviously, pit lane because of that, because it's got to fit in the exhibition hall, essentially. And Audi saw an opportunity that because the safety car was going quite slowly, they thought, well, we can go into the pits, and if the safety car is still running at the same speed, the pit lane speed limit will actually be faster and allow us to feed in at the front of the queue or a bit further up the queue. They didn't think they would actually take the lead of the race from Stoffel Van Dorn, who was leading at the time for Mercedes. And the big thing that got Di Grassi disqualified wasn't going through the pit lane. It was that he didn't stop. He didn't come to a full stop in front of the box, in front of the Audi garage. And that was what inevitably he was called in to serve a drive-through, because he pit and didn't really come to full stop. So the stop wasn't really necessary. And then because Audi didn't tell Lucas Di Grassi that he had a drive-through penalty, consequently, Di Grassi was black flagged near the very end of the race. It was rescinded. There was a bit of debate from Audi, but then eventually the disqualification stood. So Lucas Di Grassi goes from, he could have got a lot of points if he'd not taken the gamble. Maybe, like you say, he was running in 7th place at the time, or could have got up to 5th or 6th. In the end, he went for broke. Audi went for a podium in their last season, and in the end, they come away with nothing.
Yeah, we were commentating on that at the time, and we noticed. Well, you noticed first of all, didn't you, that all of a sudden Degrassi was P9, came back from a replay, and the timing monitors shot up to P1. We thought it was a timing glitch until we actually saw him in the lead on the way down towards turn 10. Very cheeky little move there. As we said in the commentary as well. I know you don't like it at all. It's unsportsmanlike, and I agreed with it, actually. It's unsporting, but it wasn't legal. That's the interesting little factor. We've been having discussions about this as well. Audi are definitely annoyed about this. We saw in the commentary, to mine and Ned's great amusement, Alan McNish was belting down different parts of the XL, running to the stewards. He's actually been fined £50,000 for that error as well. Only, though, £45,000 of that has been suspended until the end of the season. So Alan McNish only has to pay £5,000 for that little costly error running up. And it's like Ed said, it's because he made the decision not to tell Lucas Degrassi about the drive-through penalty and not the black flag. What was interesting as well is the black flag got rescinded and it's been put as a time penalty because they missed the original document that was sending to the teams. So that has since been put back in post-race, that he's got a black flag. But what that now does is it means that Audi can now appeal this decision and try and get their 8th place back. And as Ed said as well, the reason Lucas Degrassi was disqualified, not completely stopping the box, the car registered that the brakes were on and the car was at a standstill. But in fact, as we saw, because Formula E tweeted a little bit of footage, the car slipped across the track. That very slippery pit lane tarmac that we've been talking about all weekend just slipped on the XL pit lane. And that's what cost it. But yeah, Ed, in your opinion as well, it was a bit of a mockery of sportsmanship there with Lucas Degrassi. But it was a good idea. But my opinion was, if that's going to happen, maybe close the pit lane and not allow anybody in. But you've got some good rebuttals on that as well, as we had in our Twitter conversation.
We did, yeah. I sort of suggested that you said, we'll just close the pit lane if there's a safety car. But what if a car needs to come in to retire? Or what if there's debris on the main straight and they can't go through the main straight? They've got to go through the pit lane. Then they can't do that. They can't follow the safety car through the pit lane if the pit lane's closed, Josh, which is my kind of criticism of that.
I did come up with the idea, maybe have a race director dictates where the field goes. He can say, okay, you must follow through into
That's what
the
Scott
pit lane.
Elkins does, isn't it, Josh?
Oh yeah, but like how we saw back in Imola in Formula One, Mick Schumacher knocked off his front wing, couldn't go in the pit lane because it was closed, had to get special permission to come in and change the front wing. Something like that, where the teams actually have to request to Scott Elkin and the steward saying, we've got something seriously wrong with our car, can we come in and pit it? And we'll be held at the red light until the field go through, something like that. Because what happened to that rule as well? Degrassi took a big risk going through the pit lane when the safety car was there, because usually, especially in Formula One, the red light's on, you stay where you are until the field goes through. Don't know what happened to that rule. But yeah, I would close the pit lane and make them report to the stewards and say, can we bring our car in? But you brought up a good idea about cars that have to permanently retire. I thought it doesn't really matter about that one.
Yeah, I think that's all I had to say really on that.
If I can add one more thing, I don't know. It seemed very strange to me, like it was Degrassi trying to exploit a loophole in the rules, because I'm thinking, like, here in America, if you watch like an IndyCar race or a NASCAR race, for somebody in the middle of the pack under caution to just come in the pit lane and then come right out and be leading the race would make absolutely no sense. So it was funny to me to see Degrassi and Audi look like for a second that they were going to get away with that.
I do remember, was it Kyle Busch who did that? He sped right through the pit lane at Daytona, didn't he? I can't remember who it was, but he was like, he got a drive-through penalty because he was just below the white line. Then he decided, I'll take this penalty, but I'll go full throttle through the pit lane. So that was what it just reminded me of, what Lucas Degrassi did. But I'm amazed that it was even in the rules that you could enter the pit lane. And I'm very much hoping that they change it going forward.
Now, this London E-Prix circuit was indoor and outdoor. One of the craziest racetracks that, in the history of Formula E. So we'll do a roundtable discussion. We'll start with you, Josh. What did you think of this track in London, and would you want to see any changes made to it in the future?
Looking at an image of it now on my commentary box wall with the track map, and the one thing that sticks out to me is the turn 10 and 11 switchback hairpin. And I think that was a big thing when I first saw the track in Shakedown. Like, it doesn't really look like I'm going to have much overtaking there. Proved wrong. It was one of the most eventful corners of the track. I like the switchback on the inside. I think the third sector, just before we get back into the XL building, that could do with some tweaks, lengthening a little bit more of it, open up attack zone a bit more easily so you can get to it, because saw through drivers coming back through, and it nearly happened with an accident like we saw in Puebla as well. And I think the pit lane needs changing. The pit lane needs some work to it. Maybe add a chicane, something around there just to increase that time that he gets, because it was 19 seconds for a drive-through, 34 seconds if you're serving a stop-go like Buemi did. The pit lane was just too short. You gain more time. And also, that just reminded me, actually, the last time we saw this trick pulled with Degrassi, just popping back to that for a second, because I've just remembered it, was back in Berlin last year under full course yellow. We had cars going through the pit lane because it was quicker. So this has actually been done before, but it's the first time that it's been so controversial.
Yeah, I know Formula E has kind of been known for innovation, doing things a little bit differently. To have a track that's partially indoors, partially outdoors, certainly a little bit different. I know I was certainly intrigued when I heard about the plans to do it. And I've got to say, I think there was, certainly enough overtaking, certainly no shortage of things for us to talk about here today. I'd say for Formula E's return to London, it was in my eyes a pretty good success.
I'd certainly agree with that, Ben. And it's interesting because I've been sort of following the London E-Prix story, if you will, I guess, for several years. And originally, XL was kind of the backup plan in some of the very early seasons when discussions were taking place. And originally, Alejandro Agag was the CEO of Formula. He wanted London to be the season opener, actually, for the very first Formula E season. That couldn't happen, ended up being the season closer, and ended up happening as well in Battersea Park in London on the ring road on the exterior of the park, which is sort of the only circuit in terms of London E-Prix that we can really compare XL to. And I do wonder as well if the fact that it's the Gen 2 cars that have got a bit more power, especially with the inclines. Obviously, there's the ramps to sort of enter and exit the exhibition hall and the sort of start-finish straight. I do wonder if maybe some of the Gen 1 cars from earlier, the previous generation of Formula E cars, would have maybe struggled a bit more with those. In terms of the pit lane, Josh, you mentioned, I remember reading a very early plan, a sort of provisional plan for XL, just before the announcement for seasons, what was originally going to be season 6, ended up happening this season, of course, was that they were going to have the pit lane outdoors, actually. It would be sort of, instead of going up the ramp, it would be sort of by the sort of seafront, which I don't think has a lot of space, which is probably why they changed it. But yeah, as for my thoughts on the track as a whole, I definitely preferred it to the narrow ring road at Battersea, because there are a couple of areas where it's a bit wider and you could overtake, and there were interesting sort of, I know people probably decry the sort of double hairpin that's turns 10 and turn 11, but where a lot of the incidents happen, especially today, with Roland, Van Dorn hitting each other. We mentioned Buemi and Rast, and also Bird and Norman Nato coming to grief there, and Bird getting a grip penalty because of that. And I sort of understand why it's there. I think I was telling this to you, Josh, that I wish the straight between the two hairpins could have been made a bit longer. But of course, the problem is they've got the DLR railway, the Docklands Light Railway, which you may have seen the train in the coverage that's going in and out of shot next to people, as a couple of pedestrians, Formula E fans actually, who were spectating from the station, because you actually got a good view of some of those corners, because they couldn't actually get into the site due to some COVID restrictions there at the moment. They had a limited amount of fans on site, but I think a lot of people criticize that part of the track in particular. I didn't think it was all that bad. I think it's only on laps where the field got really bunched up, say after a safety car restart or at the very beginning of the race, where we'd see a lot of incidents where cars had sort of nowhere to go, and we saw a lot of drivers being made into innocent victims. But the track as a whole, I thought attack mode at turn 16 worked really well. I agree, Josh, maybe some of the corners could be tweaked a little more, because obviously it inevitably kind of bunches up near the end of the sector. But yeah, I think it's a really positive track, and I'm really glad to see Formula E is going to remain there. I think it's a great place for Formula E to grow in future, and I can't wait to actually attend myself and hopefully bring Josh along with me.
I can't wait for that. To bring back that turn 10, you're certainly right, provided action. I've printed out these are the race control messages that we get on our chat. If I just put them up there, 14 times the yellow flags came out at turn 10, the most of any corner on this track. 14 times. Yellow, double yellow, 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 double yellow, safety car. It was madness, that turn 10. And if that wasn't there, we would have seen a very different race because, well, as you said, Van Dorn got hit up by Roland and pretty much ended his race. And then a couple of laps later, had another moment there, did Van Dorn, when his front end plate fell off. And I think that was the curse of the commentator, Ed, because if you remember, I said at the beginning of the race when he was leading, it's the first time I've seen Van Dorn in about 6 races without one of his wings off. What happened later on in the race?
For me, this track kind of reminded me of the old IndyCar circuit when they raced in Vancouver. And we have a comment from Joe. He says, thoughts on Formula E in a major stadium like Wembley or the Superdome in New Orleans. Now, that'd be kind of cool to see. And I'll give you guys some history. The old IMSA Campbell GTP series, they actually, when they raced in New Orleans, they actually had a track where they raced around the Superdome. So this track in London, I loved it. It was really cool. Reminded me of the old, in the beginning of the old Vancouver IndyCar race where they ran through BC Place Stadium. And regarding turn 10 and the double hairpin, pretty wild stuff. Something I've never seen in motorsports. So hopefully this track will stay the same, or hopefully we'll make some changes in the future.
Yeah, Joe, that's an interesting proposal there. It reminds me of the NASCAR race in 1956 that Fireball Roberts won that was held at Soldier Field, which is just kind of crazy to think about how far NASCAR's come. And maybe there's something similar like that Formula E can do sometime in the future. Now, after race 1, Sam Bird held the championship points lead by a couple of points over Jack Dennis and Antonio Felix da Costa. As we mentioned, Bird failed to score any points this weekend. Da Costa crashed out of the race after contact with Andre Lauderer. A bad weekend for those two drivers, but both still in the title fight heading to Berlin. Nick de Vries and Robin Freins made big gains after failing to score points in New York City. De Vries ran consistently in London, finishing second in both races. Freins didn't score in race 1, but finished 4th in race 2, which is good enough to put him second in the championship, 6 points back. So, Edward and Adam, are de Vries and Freins the championship favorites entering Berlin, or could we see a challenge from Sam Bird and Jake Dennis behind in 3rd and 4th?
Well, it's a tough question to answer, really, because obviously so much of this is going to be influenced by the qualifying format. And obviously Sam Bird in particular has got that grid penalty hanging over him, which certainly isn't going to help. But it won't be destroy his race because it's only a 3-place grid penalty, certainly. But starting off in Group 1, especially somewhere like Berlin that isn't used very much, the first couple of groups, the track's going to be a bit green and dusty. Not going to provide as much grip as the later groups. So while De Vries, Freins, Bird, and Jake Dennis all in the top 4 in the standings, they're certainly going to have quite a fight to start in the top 4 or into Super Bowl in the top 6 for the first race in Berlin. Of course, we'll have to see how the championship shakes out in terms of the final race. But yeah, certainly all of them in play. Someone like Jake Dennis, a rookie, would be insane for Jake Dennis to win the championship. De Vries only in his 2nd season, but definitely impressing in that Mercedes, which is certainly resurgent. 2 2nd places in London certainly has put De Vries' challenge back on song. When Mercedes had quite a few rounds where, even allowing for the qualifying format, they're kind of fallen off the pace. So it's great to see them rediscovering their form. I sort of tend to look a little bit further down, actually, the field, to the likes of Mitch Evans, who finished 3rd in today in London in the 2nd race, who was quick all weekend and certainly a bit unlucky not to score any points in the 1st race because he did set fastest lap. But Evans, has definitely impressed me this season. Yet to pick up a win, though, and I wonder if he could put that right in Berlin. Then, of course, you've got the likes of Mortara, Wehrlein, who have all shined on occasion and be looking to it. There is a sense, of course, of it being a little bit like a lottery, and it's something that Formula E definitely want to address. And a lot of the drivers, Robin Freins was actually talking about this yesterday when Jack interviewed him. That Robin Freins basically said that they are looking at a different format, and that there's a sense of if you're in Group 1, it kind of resigns you unless you have a extremely good luck and good fortune, that it often can resign your weekend to the best I can hope for is maybe recover to 9th or 10th and score a couple of points. So it's very hard to predict who the actual favourite is, even with De Vries leading at the moment. But I would sort of look a bit further down to your Nick Cassidy's, your Mitch Evans, your Mortara's, all in Group 2 and 3, who potentially could gain a lot of places and put themselves in the box seats at the very end.
For me, I don't think anybody knows who's going to win this FIA Formula E championship this year. Nick De Vries may be the points leader, but we don't know what will happen in Berlin. Out of all the motorsports that I've watched in my history, this is one of the craziest championships I can remember. You have about 10 to 15 drivers who have a shot to claim the championship in Berlin. Could Jake Dennis win the championship? He sure could. What about reigning champion Antonio Felix da Costa? Sure. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in Berlin. It's going to be crazy. Nick De Vries, yeah, he may be the points leader, but I don't think his points lead is safe right now. Berlin is the 2 races in Berlin are going to be really crazy because everyone's going to go out to try to claim the Super Pole and go out and win. I'm looking forward to watching both of those races, and to be honest, I don't know who's going to win the championship, but it's going to be really, really crazy.
The defending series champion Antonio Felix da Costa scored 4 points in London over 2 races. Despite the low points total, he's still only 15 points behind in the championship, right in the thick of a title fight before his race to retirement. But he needs to be perfect and have 2 strong races at the front of the field to have a shot to defend his title. So, Josh, will the high level of parity that we see in Formula E, particularly this season, give da Costa a decent chance at winning back-to-back championships?
Last year in Berlin, we came into 6 races in 9 days with about 6 drivers anticipated to win the title. I expected da Costa to win. He did it on day 1, which kind of meant the rest of the racing was a bit pointless. But da Costa has had an interesting weekend. Had that disadvantage of being in Group 1 qualified in race 1 17th, and in race 2 was 22nd on the grid. He fought back. The points came yesterday. He was out of the race today, but as me and Ed were talking about, it was crucial for him to get into this weekend and score some points, especially with Bird not scoring. He scored yesterday 4 points. Today, DNF'd after that contact with Lotterer. Going into Berlin, he has a very, very good chance to retain his title. We've seen his teammate, Jean-Eric Verne, win 2 championships back-to-back. Chichita won the last 3. But I'm looking at the championship in front of me now, and there's 60 points on offer still, and there's more than half the field within that points gap. I've never seen a championship, no matter if it's rally championships, IndyCar championships, anything where the points are accelerated up. I've never seen when more than 15 cars can go into the last 2 races with a shot of winning the title. I mean, what is this? This isn't motorsport. This is an all-out dogfight. This is a fist fight underground with the doors locked, the lights off. Rule 1 is you don't talk about it. It is bizarre. It is strange. Da Costa stands as much chance as the next guy. If he does what he did this weekend and does strong performances on the track, then yeah, I think he'll come out and have the advantage. So it's very close. I'm looking forward to it.
Mathematically, 17 drivers still remain eligible for a championship. Alexander Sims is 18th in points. He would need to score a bonus point to keep his title hopes alive, albeit that's unlikely. From Nick De Vries leading the championship all the way down to Pascal Wehrlein in 11th, any one of those drivers could leave race 1 in Berlin with the points lead. It is absolutely crazy competitive. As we return to Berlin for the season finale, last year, of course, there were 6 races on 3 different layouts to finish the season that was impacted by the pandemic. This year, we've seen a bit of more return to normalcy with the standard 2 races, a doubleheader to crown a champion. So my question to all of you, how many drivers do you think realistically have a proper shot at the championship when we get to Berlin?
For me, you've got to say at least the top 10 have a shot to win. If I had to choose just one driver who I think has a shot, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say the defending series champion, Antonio Felix da Costa. I think, but overall for me, at least the top 10 has a shot to win the 2021 FIA Formula E World Championship.
There's now been 10 different winners in 13 races. So 10 races we've had this year. There's been 13 different races we've had this year. We've had 10 different winners. Unbelievable. Here's the championship. It is zigzagged up and down no matter where it has gone. As you say, 18 drivers realistically in with a shot. When have you ever heard that? The most we have ever had in Formula One was 5 drivers going into the last race, and that was back in 2010. I am excited. I am smiling now thinking about it. I cannot wait because I think, 1, me and Ed are going to lose our voices in the commentary. 2, there's going to be a massive accident at some point because all the drivers are not going to be pushing for the title and they're going to be helping their teammates do so. And 3, I don't think we're going to see all 18 in contention with it. I think realistically, we're going to see 12 drivers. And the reason I'm saying 12 is because it's whoever 2 groups from qualifying get the best track advantage, whether that's group 1 or group 4 on the spectrum. Dry track conditions, better track conditions, the faster guys in groups 2 and 3. I've changed my mind. Group 2 and group 3, they're the drivers to watch. And going there, it's Rast, Cassidy, Verne, all those little drivers have got nothing to lose, are going to go for it. Top pick, Nick de Vries. I know he's leading the title in Santi Climax, but he's consistent, and I think he'll have a level head. And they're good around Berlin. We saw that last year.
Yeah, interesting pick there, Josh. So in terms of my response, because I've got to pick someone, haven't I, or pick a few, at least because it's how many are in contention realistically of the 18 mathematical contenders. I certainly think what it's going to come down to is not necessarily, I disagree with you on this, Josh, not necessarily who qualifies in groups 2, 3, and 4, the later groups with the better grip. I think it's going to be who can make up places, the most places in the race, and negate having to be in group 1 and sort of do the best recovery drive. And someone who I've always seen do extremely well at are drivers like da Costa, we mentioned earlier, Robin Fries as well. Is great at that. And there are a couple others that spring to mind. Nick Cassidy, I know he's a rookie, but he's still there in contention down in 7th, the first driver, of course, in Group 2 going into the first race in Berlin. So that is sort of what I think it's going to come down to. And of course, Nick, you mentioned de Vries, and he himself has had a few great drives early in the season, particularly, and also he made up quite a few places in the 2 races in London as well. Didn't start in the, I think he started 4th today, but the day before he started like 9th and climbed up to 2nd. So certainly it can be done. You don't necessarily have to be in the best quali group to win the championship. I think it's going to come down to just making sure you can stay out of trouble and get the points you need. Realistically, if I was to pick a number, because it almost doesn't matter, I would say I think I'm going to be a bit more conservative than Josh. I think realistically there's about 8 or 9 that I would say I think have got a brilliant chance of doing it, because I do think Jake Dennis and Nick Cassidy, brilliant as they are, they're still rookies, and I still think they've gained a lot of experience over the course of this season. But you've got your Sam Birds, your Alex Linz, your de Vries with that extra season than the rookies. Robin Fries has been there a while. Da Costa, of course, a champion. All these guys who know how to win races. Someone like Sam Bird, it's the best chance of his career, let's be honest. Even with him, in third, we're talking making it sound like 14 points down is a lot, but it isn't really in the scheme of things. We're all so close together and with so many points on offer. Last thing I would say, Teams Championship also very well poised, with of course Virgin leading the way, Envision Virgin, having just taken it back from Techeetah, who got the lead by only about 2 points yesterday, and they just had it taken all back away from them by the Virgin teams. So there's about 10 teams, I think, that are in mathematical contention. I think realistically it's down to 5 or 6. So you've got your Jaguar, Techeetah, Virgin, Mercedes, BMW, and Audi. Yeah, so that's about like 6 teams, isn't it? So I think all of those are really going to be the ones fighting for that first FIA World Teams Championship in Formula E.
That's the important one, isn't it, as well?
That's where the money is, yeah.
Yeah. The money, the big prize money. And Audi are going to want to leave that one, as I said yesterday. Audi are going to want to leave on top, so they're going to go all out for it. You touched on Robin Fines there, and that's actually sparked something in my brain, actually, because I looked at the championship. He's winless so far this year, and he's in second place in the title. He's had a podium in Diriyah Race 2, podium in Monaco, and a 4th place in yesterday's London race as well, in terms of big point scoring positions. He's gone quite a couple of races where he's been dropped out, but he hasn't retired, which is interesting. But could Robin Fines be a surprise? I mean, I think
Robin
Jack Nicholls,
Fines, the winless wonder. Robin's been asked about this actually, and he said, I don't care if I win the championship with no wins. You win it however you win it. And I think he didn't say he didn't care. He used an expletive to indicate he didn't care. So I won't repeat that here for the benefit of any children that may be listening. Who knows?
Have we ever had a world champion across any category that has never won a race?
I think there was a guy in IndyCar many moons ago who might have gone very close. But
Adam's shaking his head. I know Johan Mir came close, didn't he? Mir last year won the MotoGP championship, but he won he won Europe. Then he got the title in Valencia, didn't he? So
I think Matt Crafton in the NASCAR Truck Series a couple of years ago won the championship. And how ironic is that, where you have a playoff system in NASCAR that puts such an emphasis on winning? They had a winless champion, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. I know Ryan Newman in the Cup Series, the first year they had that format, came very close to doing it, finished second to Kevin Harvick. But in terms of a straight-up championship without playoffs or anything, thinking to Formula 1, Formula E, IndyCar, if there has been one, I can't think of it myself.
I kind of want that to happen now. That be cool? Then we can sit here after round 15 and say, "Well, look at that! History has been made." So I'm changing my answer from De Vries. I'm going just like Jack Nicholls does. I'm now a Robin Fines fan, and I will be supporting Robin Fines going to Berlin just for history, because I think that's what it's all about: history and cool sporting moments. It's what we all live off for years, and saying we were there, we saw that happen. We tell our kids about it. That great move.
Turncoat, Josh. I'm going to stick with my answers.
Fair dues. I know. I'm gonna have a go at you then when we get back to Berlin in the pre-show before the commentary. I'll remember this. Don't you worry yet.
I'd love to see Sam Bird do it, just because he's been a favorite of mine ever since I went to the inaugural race in New York, and obviously he dominated that weekend. So I've always had an affinity for Sam Bird ever since that race weekend. I think it would be exciting to see him hold on to it. But, like I said, obviously he's going to have to do better than he did in London this weekend.
Antonio Felix da Costa, he's defending series champion. Could we see something happen in Berlin with him? Absolutely.
I agree there.
And now it's time for our grid. One shining moment of the weekend, where we talk about a cool motorsports story that we all like. So I'll start with you, Josh. What's your grid one shining moment of the weekend? I
do actually have two, and there's a reason for that as well. And you'll know my reason when I eventually get it up as well. From Formula E, my moment has been the great moves that we've seen throughout the field down at the Formula E race in XL. And as the driver name escaped me, I've just remembered, Antonio Felix da Costa, comically enough. I think he, in race 1, proved that it is possible to overtake at a circuit where not many people thought it would be. a situation where it'd be a processional race. So Da Costa overtaking and proving it's possible in race 1, I think delivered us with a great race 2. And the second one as well was actually, it's not a shining moment, but I think it's a reflection moment, because after me and Ed were done commentating on the Formula E race as well, in one of the Moto3's Road to MotoGPs, in their junior category as well, a rider was tragically killed this morning. 14-year-old Hugo Milan sadly passed away, just 14 years old. And I've seen him race actually on the television. He was an absolute great rider as well. And since he's go out to his friends and family as well. And I sort of want to elevate him for a second, because he was a fantastic talent as well. And it's a shame he's sadly passed.
Yeah, I guess I've got two. I've got one that's racing related and one that's a bit more kind of general, and both are kind of to do with Formula E. But I thought there was a nice little tribute there you did, Josh, to the fallen rider. So I would say in terms of driving, again I'm going to pick the sad, even though there was so much action on the I think there were a couple of non-shiny moments and crashes and stuff that probably would not be applicable. But there was one thing that did stand out to me, and that was in the first race. We talked a little bit about Jake Dennis earlier, but I really felt that Jake Dennis qualified second, of course, to Alexander Lynn, and then put on not necessarily a brave move or anything, but it was just a very mature kind of strategy that he used. Obviously, with the attack mode system that they have in Formula E, basically Alex Lynn used them, both of them, quite early, and Jake Dennis decided to basically try and hold off Alex Lynn. Obviously, attack mode is like a 250 kilowatts, of course. It's like a significant increase in power, and Jake Dennis was able to hold off Alex Lynn this crucial stint in the race and use that to be able to win. Jake Dennis, of course, as I mentioned, a rookie, someone who didn't come from an overly affluent background, who's one of the had to be helped a lot in his career by the Racing Steps Foundation, which sadly closed now, but it was founded by a Yorkshireman called Graham Sharp, and it was designed to help struggling drivers that didn't have the budget. There are a lot of Formula E drivers, in fact, that benefited from it. Oliver Rowland and Oliver Turvey being two others, of course, who are still in the championship. But I think James Collado, who was competed last year, was also one of the beneficiaries. Jake Dennis was, I think, the last person to be sponsored by Racing Steps Foundation before it closed doors. And so it was really good to see him put in such a mature, excellent performance at Excel, funnily enough. And the other shining moment, I guess, would be in terms of non-racing, but also sort of to do with Formula E, is the actual kind of moving to Excel in the first place, of course, because it took a long time to make that happen. Of course, it couldn't happen last year because of the pandemic, and the Excel Centre got turned into what we in the UK call a Nightingale Hospital for COVID-19 patients. Wasn't used a whole lot. Unfortunately, it wasn't terribly well staffed. But the nice thing that Formula E did do was they weren't able to invite a full capacity crowd, but they were able to invite a whole bunch of key workers to the track to see the race. And I hope they had a really nice time. They certainly got a spectacular show to see, and it's nice to see after what's been a very difficult year, I think, for not just the UK but the world, obviously. Good to see what was a sort of representation of what was quite a dark crisis for the country, and it's still ongoing for, I think, many people, very sadly. It turned into something a bit different, a bit more hopeful, I think, rather than pessimistic and dark. So certainly great to see the Excel. There were silly things going on there, like a few artists doing me and Josh made fun of it in commentary. Like there was an artist called Ray who was doing a couple of R&B songs, and the break dancers just doing right in the starting grid doing their little break dance routine for the song. And we thought it was a bit silly, but it does illustrate, I think, that the Excel Centre being used for something more hopeful and positive, and not to do with a pretty brutal pandemic that's certainly taking its toll on a lot of people, not least myself and my own family, sadly. But yeah, those are my choices, and certainly I think they're worthy ones.
Just want to add one more. I did some quick research. Austin Dillon in the Nationwide Series, what's now the Xfinity Series in 2013, he was also a winless champion, but those are the only times along with Matt Crafton that has happened in NASCAR. So it would be certainly quite a story if Robin Frijns could pull that off in Formula E this year. For my one shining moment, I know we spent pretty much the whole show talking about Formula E. There was an ARCA race at Iowa Speedway on Saturday night last night, and I do want to give a shout out to Ty Gibbs. I know he's been absolutely phenomenal all year, but to score what I think is his 6th win now this season, I know he's got a great team, obviously, with his grandfather and Joe Gibbs Racing. But, he is absolutely dominating that series right now. And also to Iowa Speedway, I know it's been a tough year for fans in that area, for them to have lost their NASCAR dates. It's good to see ARCA continue to come back to Iowa. And I hope that track can get some events back next season, because it would be sad to see it fall off every motorsports schedule entirely. So good to see ARCA still going there, and I've got to give take my hat off and congratulate Ty Gibbs, because he's having a phenomenal season so far, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does in the next few years.
For me, overall, it's the ARCA Menard Series in general. This weekend we didn't have NASCAR, IndyCar, Supercars, Road Rally, or Formula One. But the ARCA Menard Series has been going strong. They are a Midwestern-based stock car series, and they started the year at Daytona during Speed Weeks. They've raced Talladega, a lot of Midwestern short tracks as well, and they have competed, yes, on the dirt. They've raced at DuQuoin, Illinois State Fairgrounds and the Springfield, Illinois Mile. And 3 drivers that have come from the series who are well-known are Bob Keselowski, and his last name sounds familiar. That's Brad Keselowski's father. Tim Steele, who's a multi-year series champion, and Frank Kimmel. He dominated the ARCA series in the late 90s, overall winning 7 championships. It's a really cool series to watch. There's a great number of young talent in there, including Ty Gibbs. What he did last night was incredible. So for me, my one shining moment has to go to the ARCA Menard series as a whole in general.
And I think we have a comment from the chat room, and it's from Joe. My shining moment watching you all today, and thank you for that, Joe. And a special shout out to Kobe for producing. Yeah, Joe, I know it's unfortunate you couldn't be here with us today, but appreciate you participating in the chat room, and look forward to having you back soon. And in closing, we want to encourage everybody to like and subscribe to the Grid Network on YouTube. Also follow us on social media, specifically Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Be sure to check out Pawless. They have a clothing and accessory line for dogs of all sizes. If you click our link in the video description, you will get a 10% discount, and your purchase also goes to help homeless, sick, and rescue dogs, a wonderful cause that Grid Network strongly supports. Also, a special shout out and thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, and Deshelle. We appreciate you for investing in Grid Network. If you're interested in joining them and seeing your name on the list at the end of each show, you can find the link to our Patreon page in the video description. On Friday, our Life on the Grid 1-year celebration show with members of the team premiered on YouTube. We had lots of fun putting that together, and highly encourage all of you to check that out as well. That's also in the video description. On Wednesday night, we'll have Kobe and Adam discuss the grid ranking and Grid World Motorsport League updates on Grid Tonight. And for Adam, Josh, and Edward, I'm Ben. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time on Grid Network.
Joe Samaniego here. Wanted to invite you to go check out Pawless. Pawless is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our Grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out pawless.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.